has 1/2 cup of sugar. She is baking cookies and needs 1 1/3 cup for a recipe. How much more sugar does she need if she wants to triple the recipe? Okay, this is a two-step problem. First, it is 1 1/3 of a cup for a recipe. I want to triple that. So I take 1 1/3 times 3 because it's tripling it. So then that becomes 4/3 times 3 over 1. Reduce by 3 first, and I get 4 over 1, which is 4 cups to triple the recipe. She has 1/2 cup. So how much do I need? How much more do I need? How much more? So that means I'm going to subtract. 4 minus 1/2. I cannot take a half away from nothing, so the 4 becomes a 3, and this becomes 2 halves. 2 halves plus 1/2 is 1/2. So 3 1/2 is your final answer. Raise your hand if you got it. So if you didn't, your pen should be moving and writing down everything that I have put on the board. 2. Z 8 plus 2 is greater than or equal to 3 25/100. Draw your line. Box up my Z. I don't have to make it 1/8 right now because I'm not combining it with any other Z's. So I'm just going to concentrate on this 2, and if this is a positive 2, I'm going to go a minus 2. Make sure you're lining up your decimals in the correct spot. My decimal would be here. These cancel each other out. I'm left with Z over 8 is greater than or equal to 1.25, and it stays positive because 3 is greater and 3 is positive. If I'm dividing by 8, how do I get rid of it now? Multiply. You do the opposite, so I'm going to multiply by 8. These cancel each other out. Multiply this side by 8. So Z is greater than or equal to, well, let's do it. 8 times 5 is 40. 16 plus 4 is 20. 8 plus 2 is 10. But then I need to count my decimals. 1, 2, 1, 2. So Z is greater than or equal to 10. How many of you got number 2 correct? Excellent. 3. Write an inequality that represents the graph below. It is a filled-in circle at the -6, and it is going to the left. So it's going to be less than. This is the arrow that the pointer is going. So if I just keep that arrow up here, like this, do you see what I'm saying? But I have to put it equal to. So x is less than or equal to a -6. How many of you got that one right? Excellent. Off to a good start. In the problem to the left, solve the inequality and graph the result on the number line below. Well, you had to have what we found the answer for yesterday. That's why we have to write down everything I do. So for number 4, we had 120 plus 30x is greater than 310. Draw my line, box up the 30x. If this is a positive 120, I'm going to subtract or add the additive inverse. So these cancel each other out. I'm left with 30x is greater than, well, I can't, let's see here, 0 minus 0 is 0. Have to borrow. 11 minus 2 is 9, 2 minus 1 is 1, and it's going to stay positive. How do I get x alone? How do I get x alone? divide, because if I'm multiplying with the number next to a letter, I'm multiplying, so I'm really going to divide by 30 on both sides. So then x will be greater than, and if you have to, you do your math off to the side, 190 divided by 30, or this is where next week you can just use your calculator, but you're showing all your work. It would be 6 and 10/30, which is 6 and 1/3. So x is greater than 6 and 1/3. I believe it tells us then we have to graph the result on the number line. So here is a number line. In order to make this a good number line, I'm going to make this a 6. This would be 6 and 1/3, 6 and 2/3, 6 and 3/3, which would be 7. 7 and 1/3, 7 and 2/3, 7 and 3/3, which would be 8. Make sure that you have your spaces between your whole numbers split into thirds. So then 6 and 1/3 would be right here. And is it filled in? Should it be filled in? No. And x is greater, so I have to have my arrow pointing to the right. You guys see how that is 6 and 1/3, 6 and 2/3. Moving on to number 5. Mark earns $66 in an 8-hour shift at work. How much does he make per hour? Right here, I want you guys to write down, you are trying to find the unit rate. That's what we're trying to find. And it is dollars per hour. I want those labels. If you don't have those labels first, you better write them down. And he made $66 in 8 hours. To find my unit rate, I have to do what? Divide. So $66 divided by 8 hours. So 8 goes into 66 8 times, which is 64. 2 left. So here's my decimal, add a 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 20 2 times, which is 16, 4 left. Add a 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 40 5 times. Don't forget to bring out your decimal. So now my label is going to be $8.25 per hour. You must have a label. Six might be a little tricky yet for you guys. Which of these tables, if any, represent a proportional relationship? Okay. I want some notes on your paper. You're gonna write proportional relationship equals y over x. So then I'm going to look at my chart, and for the first one, y is 6 over 4. Thank you. And that would reduce to 3 halves. Then my next one would be 6 over 5. Does that reduce to 3 halves? Okay, so can I stop at this chart?
Yes.
So it's not proportional. My second chart would be 0 over 0, which is 0. Then I would have 4 over 2, which is 2. Do these equal each other? So do we have any proportional relationships? No. So we're going to say non-proportional. 7 wants us to write an equation for the table below. When you're writing equations, do you say x equal or y equals?
Y.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start with y equals something. So then this is where I have to figure out, how did I get from x to y? How did I get from x to y? Well, 0 to 0, I could multiply by 0, I can divide by 0, I can subtract by 0. So that's not going to help us. How do I get from 7 to 1?
Divide by 7.
Divide by 7. How do I get from 14 to 2?
Divide by 7.
How do I get from 21 to 3?
Divide by 7.
So what am I dividing by 7?
X.
So it would be y equals x divided by 7. I also want you to write it in a couple different ways. Y equals x divided by 7. Or y equals 1/7 times x. Because when I divide by 7, isn't that like multiplying by 1/7? Just like if I want to find a half of something, I'm taking it times a half or dividing it by 2. So I want you to write down all 3 of these options. And number 8. A salesman priced a four-wheeler at $3,500 the first day it was on the market. The second day, he reduced the price by 10%. What is the new price? So I start with $3,500 and I'm going to reduce. Reduce means to subtract 10%. You can do, if you want to, is over of equals percent over 100. That is fine. I am going to take this and multiply it by the decimal of 10%. So I'm going to take it times what? 0.1. Do I have to have the 0? No. So then 1 times 0, 0, 1 times 0, 0, 5, 3. I only have one decimal place, so I come over one decimal place. So I'm reducing it $350. So if I reduce it, I have to go back to my original amount, 3,500, and I need to subtract 350. Have to do some borrowing. So $3,150 is the cost after the four-wheeler has been reduced. Did anybody just start with 3,500 and multiplied it by 90%? Because you can do that, because if I do that, I'm going to change it to 0.9. 0, 0, 9 times 5 is 45, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Move the decimal place 1, move it over 1. So 3,150 is what I get again. I just didn't have to do the subtraction. Because I already did the subtraction in my head, 100 minus 10%, because the full price would be 100%, is 90%. So you already did that in your head. So either way is fine. Go ahead.